Welcome to What the Flick, everybody. The People versus O.J. Simpson, episode 6, right? I think.
Yeah.
So episode 6. This is I don't know what it's called.
Marcia.
I said it without knowing it.
I think the actual title is "For Your Consideration, Emmy Voters."
Yeah, totally.
Sarah Paulson.
Well, go ahead and give it to her.
Holy crap!
What a great performance from Sarah Paulson. So good, so rich, so layered. Agreed?
Yeah, she did a great job of showcasing the emotion that poor Marcia Clark must have felt while she was discriminated against. And I think, you know, it was an episode of the trials and tribulations of Marcia Clark. And it was really sad to see everybody from like the jury to the media to the people in the courtroom to the people watching pick her apart physically rather than just talking about the abilities of her as a lawyer. It broke my heart. It was really hard for me to watch.
Real quick, by the way, I'm sorry, Jayar Jackson, Sam Schacher, Ben Mankiewicz. Okay, yeah, I agree.
No, totally, because I think I remember watching all that stuff, and yeah, there was the constant sort of harping on her looks and her demeanor, and that's such a thing for women in the media, as I'm sure you know, to like have to. That you have to answer to that crap all the time, and because she was the one woman really who was a regular player in this whole thing, she got the brunt of it, and she was dealing with this custody battle and raising 2 kids and all this other stuff, and you really feel for her, and so much of that comes out of Paulson's performance.
That moment. Sorry, Jayar, I want to let you.
Oh no, it's another one of those things. I feel like I see this every week. Every time something else goes on, and I didn't realize the level of struggle for each person. I think a few weeks ago it was Chris Darden, and you're like, oh, I didn't know this is what he was dealing with. We knew there was a racial component, but we didn't know to which level and to what he was doing in response to it. So then we saw directly exactly what Marcia Clark was doing, and you go, Jesus, like this was the norm though. I mean, look, you go at someone's looks, and Sarah Paulson was on I think another talk show talking about it, and she actually had a chance to meet Marcia Clark in person about it afterwards as she was doing it, and she goes, they got along well. She loves what she was doing as far as the role. But then when you see how this went down, you're like, wow, I couldn't imagine the real Marcia Clark needing or wanting to watch this again.
Marcia, I don't know how much she'd seen. A couple weeks ago, I saw an interview with Marcia, and she talked about how the show had not quite gotten right, that they weren't blindsided by the racial component the way the show made it seem. She goes, but that said, it's pretty accurate, it's pretty good, and the portrayal of me is quite good, she said. Wow. So but this episode, you're right, must have been difficult. That one's just her super subtle work in the empowered feeling she had after the hairdo change, and the step by step as she walks in, literal step by step, each person's eyes, sort of that sinking feeling of, oh my God, they hate it.
This isn't working.
I'm nothing. I'm nothing.
Right.
I'm worthless.
Absolutely.
I'm worthless.
And
I'm just an incompetent mom.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think we got to see, as you brought up, not only have we seen the racial conflict presented, of course, outside of the court, but also within the courtroom, but now we're seeing some of the gender conflict.
Right.
And I think it's so important to show all that. And it really, but you also have to understand that there is, unfortunately, a psychology that goes on within the courtroom that does reflect society's depictions of sexism, right? So you saw it not only even recently with Jodi Arias, who was a terrible person, and I don't want to paint a pity party for her, but as a defendant, we saw it, we see it with the attorneys that have to try to abide by what would be appealing to the jury, and we even see it with female defendants. Jodi Arias got a make under because they were afraid that her beautiful exterior would rub the jury the wrong way, as well as the media, as well as the people watching her. So they put her in a grandma sweater, they dyed her hair brown, they put glasses on her, and it's just crazy that is not changing. It's not going to change until society changes. We're still going to see that in the courtroom, whether it's a Marcia Clark or a Jodi Arias.
And this is what made you think about it more. I mean, I keep comparing the real life. I looked up pictures of Chris Darden, not to say that he had an easy ride, but no one talked about his looks.
Right.
And he wasn't very well put together. I got to be honest. He looked a little,
especially in
he looked a little
comparison
unkempt at times.
to the sort of perfectly everybody from Shapiro and Cochran and Bailey, like those guys. Everybody but Barry Scheck was dressed.
Well, and there was an interview I read recently with some politicians where they were saying something really admiring about Hillary Clinton, that when they were in the State Department or whatever, you'd go to these different corners of the world, and everybody had to get up really early for these meetings, and that Hillary had to get up an hour earlier because she had to have her hair done.
Right.
And it's like oh yeah, of course, because you can't be a woman as a public figure and not have to spend extra time on your appearance because
Remember,
then
she was late coming back for one of the debate, like a minute later, 30 seconds when they came back because she used the bathroom, and obviously when a woman comes out, whatever it takes, they need an extra 90 seconds. It's not that big. It's not that big a deal. So, and by the way, just when I said about Marcia and incompetent mother, she's clearly not an incompetent mother, but in her mind, she's like, I can't.
And to get that
that's all I'm at,
the tabloid photo on top of everything else, at some point you're just like, who the lesser of us who would have caved by that point?
It's so
But
frustrating.
she's still not just
betrayal
quitting
by
it all.
two ex-husbands. Like, shut up.
The
don't
betrayal,
go on,
the
don't go on
topless
TV.
photo, I cannot imagine
even-
the invasion how invasive this poor woman, like honestly, and it's so infuriating to watch because to a small degree, I can't relate to what she's going through, but to a small degree, we see it in the YouTube comments, right? I see it when I go on Dr. Drew, people disparaging my looks rather than talking about what I'm actually saying. And then to top it all off, I have waited to have kids. I can't wait to have kids, but I think about, am I going to be able to balance career? Am I going to be able to balance being a mom? Am I going to be able to take time off? There's no mandated parental leave policies here in America. So it's like, how do we manage all this? And then you see a woman that's doing it, doing her damn best, and then she gets attacked for it. It's so frustrating, and not a lot has changed since then.
That was going to be my question. How much has changed?
I was going to say, I like to think that we'd be a little more enlightened about it, but no, we wouldn't. We would be equally shitty. And then on top of it, there'd be the internet,
Right, it'd be
which
worse.
makes everything worse.
Right. I mean, when I go on the internet, and I've gotten it in the last couple of days ever since our debate coverage a couple nights ago, because Cenk and I had a debate fight, not a real fight.
It
we talked about sports. 5
nowhere
seconds
near
after.
it.
But what happened?
Right. No, I don't even want to.
No, but in the internet, what did people say?
Oh, they're on my side. Because, but like, I don't want them on my side.
We don't need
I'm
sides.
I'm not interested in it, but I can't. But every time I get it on, I make the mistake of seeing somebody say something nasty about me. I remember, like, for you and for Anna and for every other woman here, it's Christy. It's like 75 times worse. Like, what do I got? Nothing. I got nothing to complain about.
They pick out like, Sam, eat a cheeseburger. Well, I do eat. Or if for some reason for some other person, they might say, I have a fat face or a cunt face, or I have no joke. Like, I get this nightly,
And
or I have a horse face.
The compliments are terrible too.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
Oh, the compliments. Yeah. Oh, your tits look great tonight, Sam.
Yeah.
Thank you. Fuck you. Like, fuck you.
Yours
but,
are nice too.
Yeah. Sorry for all the cussing. I apologize, but it's a heated episode.
No, and I wouldn't. Don't read the comments. Just don't.
It's hard when it's being tweeted at you, though, too.
Yeah, the tweets. That's right. The tweets. The tweets are that you can't really avoid. But
Sarah Paulson killed it.
she really.
Killed it.
The level which y'all say they took advantage of knowing how it works. Okay, so there was the aspect of when Johnny Cochran decided to point out, we're going to deal with these problems. Is she a professional, or is she going to talk about her child care issues again? And went into the depth of that, and she had to go in on him a little bit and mention, hey, you might not want to F with me right now. So and that was one of those moments where you're like, okay, yeah.
I wonder if we're going to get a moment from Cochran of like a human moment with her. Like, I thought we might after that, where she would go, where he might go, that was good today. Nice comeback.
Right.
I was probably a little out of line. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But it was so nice, and with my, it's great seeing the stuff my wife reacts to, but because she felt clearly and we have a kid now, and my wife was a big, empowered person at work, and she has left that life, and it's a hard thing to balance. But we're watching the show, and when Darden wrote, I think you look great, she was like,
I know, me too.
yeah, totally, me too. No,
And
I
held
felt it
her
too.
hand.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And then you have the juxtaposition
Yeah.
of that, where she goes and buys tampons, and then the cashier says, "Oh, it's going to be a hard week for the defense." I was like, "Oh,
And that really happened.
Yeah.
That was I am not reading articles about this, but that was a headline. That fucking happened.
And that's a parallel to we talked about today's world. I don't know. I'd say 90%. I'm sure that cashier thought he was going, go get him. There's a tough week for them. Like, he felt he was on her side. So this is almost a compliment he feels like he's giving her. Oh, you're ready this week, aren't you?
It's just sheer ignorance. That's what it is. Like, they don't even know. A lot of them aren't motivated by malicious motivations, but it's just this culture that exists where they're blinded by their actions.
You know what? Donald Trump will put an end to all that.
My takeaway from all this is that, like, Johnny Cochran is a fucking asshole, and boy, do I want him to be my lawyer if I'm ever in trouble.
Yeah, he's,
If he was still alive.
If he's still alive, obviously, yes. But I mean, just like somebody like that, and I keep bringing up the Better Call Saul, OJ parallels, but it's like, yeah, lawyers are, they can be just really terrible, but if they're doing it on your behalf, then bless their hearts.
I think those three roles, the three when we talked, you talked about there earlier, that we focused on a couple. Sterling Brown as Chris Darden, Sarah Paulson as Marcia Clark, and Courtney B. Vance as Cochran. I think those are all three of those. I think they're just killing it. I think they're getting tens. Those three.
I want more Robert Morse's Dominic Dunn.
Oh right, but Robert Morse's Dominic Dunn is so good.
I know
so great.
I know there's the one small aspect of this episode that I think was less focused on Marcia, but was the housekeeper for the neighbor.
Oh, Rosa
Mr. Johnny.
As to what was going on, what was the
so was she,
idea? What did they think they were going to get from this?
First of all, that's because that touches on Ito. Like I mean, and I think slowly we're getting to see
how crazy he was, celebrity craze.
Right, not a villain in the traditional sense, but I mean this case could have been handled very differently by a different judge. It wouldn't have taken as long. He wouldn't have said constantly, you see it here, I guess we'll break. Like something you just say, how about no?
How about you make a decision?
No, make a decision. No, we're going to proceed here. But here he breaks up the prosecution's momentum. Again, that's not why they lost the case.
I love the family court judge being, I'm not Lance Ito.
Right, that was not. But we see he can't. He loved it. He loved extending it. It loved his. It seems, and that's why I felt at the time, and others did too. But that moment of with Rosa Lopez. So again, breaking up the prosecution's momentum, bringing in Rosa Lopez for a hearing on whether she can be a witness.
Right.
Again, an entire day just completely lost to this, and you see, and then OJ flips out about it. We got to see a moment of sort of OJ taking charge, even though that wasn't that damaging. It wasn't in front of the jury. It didn't really make any difference.
But you're right. This was an 8-month trial. Wow. 8 months. You have to think about the jury. The jury, they go home or to their sequestered hotel without TV, without phones, without any interaction. Right. Yeah, they have field trips here and there, but for 8 months, that's enough to make anybody go crazy.
And told throughout that, again, correctly told, that reasonable doubt. And I think, and as natured by the fact that the deliberations were 4 hours, I think
4-hour deliberation. That's insane.
What it tells me is that months before the end of the trial, they were like...
Oh, they were deciding.
They were like... And all they had to decide was, I don't know. I'm too confused, but I'm not convicting. I'm too confused.
I just saw a special to touch on that, but not jump forward because I know we'll get to the deliberation. But one of the jurors was there and mentioned that in their 4-hour deliberation, not once did they talk about the DNA evidence.
Right, not once.
Not once.
Wow.
No. That tells you everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Bravo, very Schacher.
Yeah.
There was also this was a throwaway line, and it's a little on the nose, but because it was a throwaway line, it worked. Where they cut to the people watching the trial in different places, and the guy in the restaurant says, "They need to have Cato back on this show."
On this show. How great was that?
Yeah.
Which that moment reminded me. Have y'all seen A Cry in the Dark?
Yeah.
It's the Dingo Ate My Baby movie.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But it's about like Meryl Streep plays this real woman in Australia who was brought to trial on these charges, and because she, again, like the Marcia Clark thing, she didn't scan well on camera. She had a harsh face, and she didn't dress up, and people didn't like her hair. Like there was this sort of public judgment about her guilt based on just bullshit stuff. And half of that, or a good third of the movie, is just random people watching the trial or watching coverage of the trial in restaurants and bars and talking about it and making these opinions based on just visual cues.
Visual cues. Yeah. A woman has to smile, but the men don't have to, right? She comes off as like a hard-nosed bitch if she's not smiling, but then Johnny Cochran and their team, they come off as strong and tough, and that's what's
because they've got power suits on.
Right, and you see her in the office, you recognize that that's what she was. She was, in a sense, the Johnny Cochran of that office. She is, a lot of prosecutors are, but she was tough and ballsy and in charge. Right, she was sort of what you want a prosecutor to be, but in this context of this show that became the O.J. Simpson trial, it didn't work. Real quick before we go, did we like his O.J.'s dressing down of his? It's weird. It was interesting to see them as little boys all of a sudden. These guys who'd been in charge the whole time, and then O.J. screaming at him, and they're all like,
well, that's their client.
Sometimes this happens, O.J. Yeah.
Well, and he's Juice. He's Uncle Juice.
And then he clears the room.
Right.
It's funny to clear the room, and then they're like, "Hey, you're in prison."
Get out of here.
Where are you going?
You can't leave. We can leave.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. We'll leave. Fine. I'm going to dinner. See ya. All right. Good stuff as always. Wonder how it turns out.
No spoilers.
By the way, 2017 is when we should mention it every time. That's when he's due for release.
Oh, that's right.
In Nevada.
Right.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody.
know that.